This is a summary of Patrick Lecture 48, Life Force in the Universe, Part 2, Week 2, which is developing your own mediator. My desire was to give more time to push for people to take a look at more exercises and more materials about how to see things from other perspectives, which is the suggestion in the three-part method of number one, advocating for the other side, verbalizing it. Secondly, going to a neutral party and asking them to hear what you've come up with and give you feedback on whether that makes sense to them, whether it holds water, what you might have missed. And the scary part, step three, to go to the person that you're in disagreement with and lay out their case and say, do I understand you completely? People tend to misunderstand that step as if that's a surrender. Here, this is your point of view, and I will agree to it completely. But that's not what the suggestion is. It's a matter of laying it out and asking for feedback. If you've misunderstood the other person's perspective, wouldn't it be good to get it right? Because then there might not be a disagreement. If a neutral party can point that out, that's great. But sometimes the fact is that you've received the wrong information in the first place, and there needs to be a correction. And only the person involved might be able to offer that correction. Now, does there need to be good faith on both sides? Yes. But the presumption is that there is good faith. You're trying to work this out. So that's the method that was introduced last week and that continues. So I brought in other quotes from other lectures. And one of them is from Path to the Real Self, Chapter 5, uh, about self-confrontation, suggestions for how to confront oneself. And one of many suggestions made in that lecture, I picked out three: recognizing resistance, investing time, and daily review. Now, in terms of recognizing resistance, I have found, my personal opinion is that Pathwork is one of the few spiritual paths where we focus an awful lot of time on the possibility that we are resistant to spiritual truth. And so there needs to be a little digging and tunneling, a little effort put in, because we have very good defenses and we're afraid of the truth and we don't really want to find it. And that's the essence of resistance, is we don't resist what we don't already suspect is going to affect us, change us, at worst, control us. So we resist it because we have a prejudice that not clinging to what we agree with will be detrimental to us. And we make the argument fit. You can see how that fits with this methodology. So it's important to recognize our resistance. In order to recognize resistance, you need to invest time. Now, the guide says, for instance, in this lecture, give it 20 minutes a day. Now, I'm not a person of habit. Not easy for me to remember to do anything every single day. So I found this difficult. But over the years, I have found places where I can engage in certain thinking processes along with certain habits. So just as suggestions in your commute, while walking to the bus stop or the subway station, while doing dishes, while washing your hair, what else are you going to think of? Invest some time in reflecting upon your resistance, the issue, different parts of it. And the final suggestion is data review. Now, data review is resisted by many people, but once again, because it has the capacity to unearth stuff that we don't want unearthed. I make a joking reference to the robot vacuum that I own, that I'm constantly having to empty the bin, and I can't explain to you where all this dust and debris is coming from. I don't see it piece by piece, but the robot vacuum collects it in a very neutral, non-agenda way, and it shows up after a certain amount of time. This is what daily review is intended to do. Whether you do it written or whether you do it in terms of thinking, remember that resistance is going to help you forget. It's going to encourage you to minimize. It's going to encourage not connecting all these things together, or it will lead you to connecting things that don't make any sense or aren't productive. And so the daily review stands as the raw material of what you remember in a given time period. It may not work for a day or two. It may not work for a week or two. The guide's promise is that do it for a month and you're going to see patterns. You're going to start to see things that you have minimized, that you weren't fully aware of. And there they are, and you can sense it. Now, if you can't, go get somebody else to help you read it. Hopefully someone neutral who will not judge you, who has not got who's not invested in what you believe and how you act, who can just say, well, this is what I notice. And that is what I feel the value of therapists or helpers, etc., is. But self-led groups can do the same thing. What can also help is talking about it. We hear ourselves talk. We know when we're speaking nonsense. We know when what we're saying makes no sense. And so a starting point is to speak it in any form or venue or arena you can, to speak and verbalize your beliefs. And then notice your responses, your reaction, how you feel about it. Notice if what you say sounded good when it was quietly rolling around in your thought process, doesn't quite make sense when you say it. As an example, sometimes I think I know what I'm talking about, and I try to describe a concept, and I don't. It's blatantly obvious that I'm confused and I'm just running around in circles. So it's information for me. I take it back. Hopefully I did that in private. Take it back and I work on it so that if I can express it in a cogent way, it probably means that I understand it more cogently. Same thing about our stories. They don't hold water sometimes, and we can hear it, which is why we don't talk about it, so that it's buried in the mystic regions of our thought process and affected by our emotions and agendas and not spoken. So another suggestion is to stop judging. Sounds easy, very difficult. Judging is different from discernment. Discernment is a skill that we need to learn. Discernment is triage. Discernment is deciding what the priority is or what we're actually trying to figure out instead of just dumping the dirty laundry and dumping the information out. We have to go through it and say, this matters, but this doesn't. That's discernment. But we turn it into judgment, which is dualistic, innocent or guilty, guilty, not guilty. And that's a very high bar we can't really achieve most of the time that inhibits us from sorting through the material, especially when truth is often complex. Another section from Patrick Lecture 42 is about how objectivity is essential. I spoke today about Susan Thasenga's book, The Undefended Self. In chapter 3 is called The Observer Self. It's the best written material I have come across in Pathwork on that concept of the observer self. It's mentioned once in the guide and it is referred to constantly, but not in that cogent way. And so Susan Thasenga has given me permission, which I'm very grateful for, to put the entire chapter 3 on my website for download. It's under additional materials. Developing the observer self is a critical step in transformation process because there's a place where the lower self wants to condemn us. And the objective observer is the neutral part of us that says, you're not perfect, but it's not that bad. Yes, it's busy, but it's not that busy. There are many serious things to consider. Why don't we look at them? I often call it the internal referee that just calls the balls the way they land and says, that's out, that's in. Do what you want to do with it. but it's an important part of ourselves that needs to be developed. Another section that I brought up in this, full of suggestions, is the grain of truth, which is talked about several times. The reference I made was to Patrick Lecture 43, Personality Types. Grain of truth is about how people will hold on to the grain of truth, even though it's covered with a mountain of other stuff. And they won't give up their argument, in part because there is a grain of truth, even if they can't fully identify it, and they're unwilling to separate it from other agenda items that are jumping in. We have our grain of truth in our arguments, but so does the other person. And how it is very useful to identify, find, name, and accept the grain of truth in the most odious argument that's thrown at us. For instance, superiority or eugenics or differences in race or whatever, the grain of truth that there are differences in development can be used to justify prejudice. Discernment is differentiating the grain of truth, people are different, from their basic human rights. So discernment, objectivity, grain of truth, these are all tools that can help us understand our own arguments and delineate the lower self or agenda or self-interest, and to also analyze the other person's arguments and differentiate their self-interest and their agenda kindly, lovingly, because we do the same thing, so that we center more on the truth of an issue than our personal interpretations or needs that get attached to it. So what has come up this week is people go into overwhelm. And what I like to do is I like to say there's a lecture on that. Why do I like to do that? You're not alone. There's a lecture on that. Apparently there was more than one person who felt this way, so the guide offers an entire lecture on it. So in terms of overwhelm, there's Patrick Lecture 27 that says escape is possible also on the path. So you can use concepts to distort yourself, to cover up truth. You can. Overwhelm is a way for the lower self, for the less developed parts of us, to convince us not to bother. Too much work, too much effort. Oh my God, you'll never finish. And that's based on perfectionism, which has a lecture, Pathwork Lecture 97. You're not going to be perfect. And also on there being an absolute, a right versus wrong in every possible instance, which is dualistic thinking, which refers to Pathwork Lecture 143. So this was kind of a compendium of concepts geared around helping you use the tools and suggestions that were in Pathwork Lecture 48. So thanks for taking a look. I hope you listen to Pathwork Lecture 48, the life force in the universe, and play with the suggestions as best you can. And thanks for listening.